The stopped clock. Lily heard the clock stop at exactly 3:17. The strange thing was that she was asleep when it happened. She sat up suddenly in bed, her heart beating fast. The room was dark except for a pale line of moonlight across the floor. Everything was quiet, too quiet. Then she noticed it. The old grandfather clock in the corner of her apartment had stopped ticking. Tick, tick, tick. For 3 years, the clock had never stopped. Day and night, through storms and power cuts, it had always kept moving. Now, the hands stood perfectly still. 3:17. Lily climbed out of bed and walked across the room. The clock had belonged to her grandmother. It was taller than Lily and made of dark wood. Small carved flowers ran along its sides. Most people thought it was ordinary. Lily was not so sure. As she touched the glass door, a cold feeling ran through her hand. Then she heard something. A whisper. "Lily!" She jumped back. The room was empty. The whisper was gone. For a long moment she stared at the clock. Finally, she wound it with the old brass key. The ticking returned. Tick, tick, tick. Relieved, Lily returned to bed. But before she fell asleep, she noticed one more thing. The clock was now showing 3:18. Only 1 minute had passed. Yet her phone said it was 4:02. The next morning, Lily tried to forget about it. She worked at a small bookshop near the center of town. Most days were quiet. She spent her time arranging books, helping customers, and drinking too much tea. But all day she kept thinking about the stopped clock. By evening, curiosity won. After closing the shop, she visited her grandmother's old house. The house had been empty for years. Dust covered the windows. Wild flowers grew in the garden. Lily unlocked the front door and stepped inside. The familiar smell of old wood greeted her. Everything looked smaller than she remembered. She walked through the silent rooms until she reached her grandmother's study. There, among stacks of notebooks, she found a small leather journal. Inside, most pages contained ordinary notes. Shopping lists, weather observations, birthday reminders. Then Lily found an entry written in shaky handwriting. The clock stopped again today. Lily froze. She kept reading. 3:17, the same time as before. Her stomach tightened. The next lines were even stranger. When the clock stops, time opens. Listen carefully. The lost moments try to return. Lily stared at the page. Lost moments? What did that mean? She searched through the journal for an explanation, but there was none. Only one final sentence. If it stops for Lily, she must follow the signs. That night, Lily sat beside the grandfather clock. She placed a notebook on her lap. Outside, rain tapped softly against the windows. The apartment felt unusually still. Hours passed. Nothing happened. At midnight, she laughed at herself. Maybe her grandmother had simply enjoyed writing mysterious things. Maybe she was imagining connections where none existed. Lily stood up. At that exact moment, the clock stopped. 3:17. Again, even though it had been showing midnight only a second before. A chill spread through the room. The air felt heavier. Then something appeared. A single golden feather drifted from nowhere. It floated slowly through the room and landed near the door. Lily stared at it. The feather looked real. She picked it up. Warmth spread through her fingers. Then she heard the whisper again. "Follow." The voice sounded gentle, familiar, almost like her grandmother. The feather slipped from her hand. To Lily's amazement, it began sliding across the floor. Not blowing, not rolling, sliding, as if an invisible person was pulling it. Lily followed it into the hallway. The feather stopped beside a small closet. She opened the door. Inside sat an old cardboard box she had never noticed before. The box contained photographs, hundreds of them. Many showed Lily as a child. Some showed her grandmother. Others showed strangers. Then Lily found a photograph that made her stop breathing for a second. It showed a little girl standing beside a fountain. The girl looked exactly like Lily, but Lily had never been there. She turned the photo over. On the back were written 3 words: "Summer that vanished." The next day, Lily carried the photograph everywhere. The fountain looked familiar somehow, yet she could not remember visiting it. During lunch, she showed it to her coworker Emma. "Maybe you forgot," Emma suggested. "No," Lily said. "I remember almost everything from childhood." Emma smiled. "Nobody remembers everything." The word stayed with Lily. Nobody remembers everything. That evening she searched through old family albums. Eventually she found another picture of the same fountain. This one included her grandmother. The date was written clearly: July 12th, 20 years earlier. Lily frowned. According to family records, she had been sick at home that entire week. So, how could she be in the photograph? The mystery deepened. 3 nights later, the clock stopped again. 3:17. This time a silver marble appeared beneath it. The marble glowed faintly. Lily picked it up. Instantly, a memory flashed through her mind. She was 6 years old, running through a sunny park, laughing, holding the silver marble. Then the vision vanished. Lily staggered backward. The memory felt real, yet she had never remembered it before. Could this be one of the lost moments mentioned in the journal? The next morning she called her mother. "Did I ever have a silver marble?" she asked. There was silence. Then her mother laughed softly. "You love that marble." "I did." "You carried it everywhere for months." Lily sat down slowly. "Why don't I remember it?" Her mother hesitated. "I'm not sure." Another pause. "Actually, there are many things from that summer you never seem to remember." As the weeks passed, more objects appeared whenever the clock stopped. A blue ribbon, a tiny brass bell, a paper boat. Each object brought back another forgotten memory. The memories were happy, simple, beautiful. A picnic by a river, a walk beneath lanterns, a visit to the mysterious fountain. Lily began collecting the objects on a shelf. Slowly, a picture formed. All the memories came from the same summer. The summer that vanished. The summer she had somehow forgotten. One evening, she spread the objects across her table. There were 12 in total. 12 objects. 12 memories. Yet something felt incomplete. One memory was still missing. The most important one. She could feel it, like a word resting at the tip of her tongue. Then came the night the clock stopped for the final time. 3:17. The room filled with golden light. Lily stood up immediately. The clock door swung open by itself. Inside lay a small key, not the brass winding key, a different one, old and silver. Lily picked it up. The moment she touched it, the apartment disappeared, or seemed to. Suddenly, she stood beside the fountain from the photographs. Sunlight sparkled on the water. Birds sang in nearby trees. The air smelled of summer grass. And sitting on a bench was her grandmother. Young, healthy, smiling. Lily's eyes widened. Grandma? Her grandmother looked up. I was wondering how long it would take. Lily could hardly speak. This can't be real. Her grandmother smiled. Real is a complicated word. They sat together beside the fountain. For a while neither spoke. Then Lily asked the question that had haunted her for weeks. What happened to that summer? Her grandmother looked toward the water. When you were 6, you became lost here. Lily felt a shiver. I don't remember. I know. What happened? You wandered away and found something unusual. What? A place where forgotten moments gather. Lily blinked. A place. Her grandmother nodded. Sometimes moments disappear. Small joys, tiny memories, laughter, wonder. They drift away from people over the years. The fountain water shimmered. You spent one afternoon there. Lily listened carefully. When you returned, the place took the memories with it to protect itself. So I forgot everything, almost everything. Lily looked down. The answer felt strangely right, like a missing puzzle piece sliding into place. But why is the clock returning them now? Her grandmother smiled gently. Because you need them. Need them? You've been so busy growing up that you've forgotten how much beauty exists in ordinary days. Lily thought about her recent years. Work, bills, schedules, deadlines, always rushing, always planning. Perhaps her grandmother was right. The older woman stood. The clock was never measuring time. What was it measuring? Her grandmother touched Lily's shoulder. Wonder. The fountain, the sunlight, and her grandmother slowly faded. Lily opened her eyes. She was back in her apartment. The grandfather clock stood quietly in the corner. Its hands still pointed to 3:17. Then, for the last time, they moved. Tick, tick, tick. The clock resumed its journey. And Lily suddenly remembered everything. The vanished summer, the fountain, the laughter, the hidden place full of forgotten moments. Most importantly, she remembered how it felt to notice small wonders. The shape of clouds, the sound of rain, the smell of old books, the warmth of sunlight on a window. Tears filled her eyes, though she was smiling. The next morning, she walked to work more slowly than usual. The world looked different, not because it had changed, because she had. A child waved at her from a passing bicycle. Lily waved back. A bird landed on a fence nearby. She stopped to watch it. For the first time in years, she was not in a hurry. That evening she returned home and looked at the grandfather clock. It ticked steadily, ordinarily, quietly. No golden feathers appeared. No magical objects. No whispers filled the room. Its work was finished. Yet sometimes late at night, Lily would notice the hands resting briefly near 3:17. Only for a second, almost as if the clock were smiling. And whenever that happened, she would pause and look around. Because somewhere in the ordinary world, another lost moment might be waiting to be found.
The train at 11:30. Ella checked the clock again. 11:12 p.m. The station was almost empty now. Only a few people stood near the tracks, silent and tired. A cold wind moved through the open platform, carrying the smell of rain and metal. Ella pulled her coat closer around her body. She hated being out this late. Usually she finished work before sunset, but her manager had asked her to stay longer that evening. A customer had caused problems at the bookstore and everything became delayed after that. Now she was here alone waiting for the last train home. The train at 11:30. A soft voice suddenly spoke behind her. "You should be careful here at night." Ella turned quickly. An old woman stood near the vending machine. She wore a long gray coat and held a small black bag in her hands. Ella forced a polite smile. "I'll be okay." The woman looked at her for a few seconds longer than normal. Then she said quietly, "Not everyone who gets on that train arrives where they expect." Ella blinked. "What?" But the woman turned away and walked slowly toward the stairs. Ella watched her disappear. A strange feeling moved through her chest. She laughed softly to herself. Probably just a lonely old woman trying to sound mysterious. Still, the words stayed in her mind. Not everyone who gets on that train arrives where they expect. The lights above the tracks flickered once. Then again. Ella looked down at her phone. No messages. She opened her music app, then closed it again. The station felt too quiet for music somehow. At 11:28, another person arrived on the platform. A tall man in a dark coat. He stood far away near the end of the tracks, his face hidden by shadows. Ella noticed something strange immediately. He was not looking at the tracks. He was looking at her. She looked away quickly. Maybe he was not. Maybe she imagined it. But when she glanced back a moment later, he was still staring. Her stomach tightened. She moved closer to the middle of the platform where the cameras were. The man did not move. A loud sound broke the silence. The train was arriving. Bright lights appeared in the darkness ahead. The train slowed with a long metallic scream. The doors opened. Only 3 people got off. Ella entered quickly and sat near the front. The train was almost empty. She relaxed a little. Then she looked through the glass doors between the train cars. The man in the dark coat had entered too. He sat 2 cars behind her. Still watching her. Ella looked down immediately. Her heartbeat became faster. Don't panic, she told herself. Maybe he rides this train every night. Maybe he just has an unfriendly face. She tried to focus on her phone, but she could feel his eyes on her every few seconds. At the next station, nobody entered. Nobody left. The doors closed again. The train continued through the darkness. Outside the windows, the city slowly disappeared. Buildings became fewer. Streets became emptier. Ella frowned. That was strange. This train should pass through the center of the city first. Instead, they were moving toward the industrial area near the river. Ella opened the transit map above the door. Her blood turned cold. The map lights were wrong. Very wrong. This was not her train line. She stood up quickly. She had entered the correct train. Hadn't she? She walked to the door connecting the next car. Ella froze. The door should never be locked. She tried again harder. Nothing. The lights flickered overhead. A voice suddenly spoke behind her. You noticed. Ella turned sharply. The man in the dark coat stood only a few feet away now. Closer than before. Too close. What do you want? She asked. Her voice sounded weak. The man tilted his head slightly. You should sit down. No. The train moved through another dark tunnel. The lights flickered again. For 1 second everything went black. When the lights returned, the man was even closer. Ella stepped backward immediately. Stay away from me. But the man did not look angry. He looked nervous. Almost frightened. You don't understand, he said quietly. Understand what? This train. Ella stared at him. What about it? The man looked around carefully before speaking again. This train should not exist. A cold feeling spread through Ella's arms. What are you talking about? I saw you talking to the old woman. Ella said nothing. She warned you, didn't she? The train suddenly slowed. Outside the windows, there was nothing except darkness and distant factory lights. No station. No houses. Nothing alive. The train stopped completely. The doors did not open. Silence filled the car. Then Ella heard it. Footsteps. From the next train car. Slow footsteps. Coming closer. Ella looked toward the locked door. A shadow moved behind the glass. The man's face changed immediately. She's coming, he whispered. Who? But he did not answer. The footsteps stopped outside the door. Ella could hear breathing now. Slow breathing. Like someone standing directly beside the glass. Then came a soft knocking sound. Ella could barely breathe. A woman's voice came through the door. Open the door. Ella jumped. The voice sounded calm. Gentle even. But something felt deeply wrong about it. The man stepped backward quickly. Don't answer her. Who is she? Ella whispered. The knocking came again. Ella, the voice said softly. Ella's entire body froze. How does she know my name? Open the door, the voice repeated. We need to talk. Ella looked at the man. His face had become pale. If she enters this car, he said quietly, we won't leave this train. Ella felt dizzy. None of this made sense. Maybe this was a dream. Maybe she had fallen asleep at the station. Maybe. The voice interrupted her thoughts again. She's lying to you, it said. Ella looked toward the door. You don't know him. The man spoke quickly. She tricks people. Don't listen. The woman laughed softly behind the glass. And you don't. Silence. Ella looked between the door and the man. Fear sat heavily inside her chest. Tell me what's happening, she demanded. Neither answered immediately. Finally the man spoke. 3 years ago I entered this train by accident. Ella stared at him. It appears sometimes after midnight. Always at empty stations. Always when someone is alone. That's impossible. I know. The train lights dimmed again. You can leave at the next stop, the man continued. But only if you ignore her. The woman behind the door sighed. He says that because he wants you to replace him. Ella frowned. What? The man shook his head angrily. That's not true. You've been trapped here for years, the woman replied calmly. You know the rules. Ella stepped backward again. What rules? Nobody answered immediately. Then the woman spoke softly. This train needs passengers. The silence afterward felt enormous. Ella's mouth became dry. No, she whispered. This isn't real. The woman laughed again. That's what everyone says at first. The train suddenly began moving again. Slowly at first. Then faster. The footsteps behind the door disappeared. Ella looked out the window. Shapes moved outside in the darkness. Not buildings. Not trees. People. Dozens of silent figures standing beside the tracks. Watching the train pass. Ella looked away immediately. What are they? She whispered. The man did not answer. He sat down heavily in one of the seats and covered his face with his hands. For the first time he looked exhausted. Not dangerous. Just tired. Very tired. Ella sat across from him carefully. What's your name? He hesitated. Daniel. How long have you been here? I don't know anymore. That woman said you're trapped. Daniel laughed bitterly. She's trapped too. The train entered another tunnel. Everything outside vanished again. How do I leave? Ella asked quietly. Daniel looked at her for a long moment. You have to get off before the final stop. And then you walk away and never speak about this again. And if I don't? Daniel looked toward the dark window. You stay. Ella felt cold all over. The train continued moving endlessly through darkness. Minutes passed. Or maybe hours. Time felt strange here. Ella checked her phone again. 11:30 p.m. The time had not changed. A sudden announcement filled the train. Next stop, Blackwater. The voice sounded broken and unnatural. Like an old recording underwater. Daniel stood up immediately. This is your chance. The train slowed again. Outside the windows a station slowly appeared. But it did not look normal. The lights were dim yellow. The walls were cracked. Every advertisement was faded and torn. And the platform was completely empty. No, Ella whispered. Something about the station terrified her instantly. The doors opened with a loud hiss. Cold air entered the train. Daniel looked at her urgently. Go now. Ella stood frozen. The platform looked wrong. Too still. Too silent. Then she noticed movement. At the far end of the station stood the old woman from before. The woman who had warned her. She lifted one hand slowly. As if inviting Ella to come closer. Ella's heart pounded painfully. Who is she? Ella whispered. Daniel's face tightened. She was the first. The first what? But before he could answer, the lights went out again. Darkness swallowed the train. Ella heard movement around her. Fast movement. A whisper near her ear. Don't trust him. The lights returned suddenly. Daniel was gone. Ella spun around in panic. The train car was empty now. Completely empty. Daniel. No answer. The doors began closing. Ella reacted instantly and jumped onto the platform just before they shut. The train started moving again immediately. Ella watched it disappear into darkness. Then silence returned. The station felt dead. Not abandoned. Come with us. Ella backed away immediately. No. Daniel smiled slightly. You're already part of this place. No. The old woman moved in front of Ella protectively. She still has time. Daniel looked at the woman coldly. You said that about yourself once. The station lights exploded overhead. Glass rained onto the platform. The train horn screamed again. Ella turned and ran. She ran toward the staircase as fast as possible. Behind her she heard footsteps. Many footsteps. Not human footsteps. Too fast. Too uneven. Ella did not look back. She climbed the stairs two at a time, breathing hard. The sounds behind her became louder. The staircase seemed endless. Every light above flickered violently. Then suddenly, a door appeared ahead. Bright white light shined around its edges. Ella pushed herself forward desperately. The footsteps behind her were almost beside her now. She grabbed the door handle. Cold fingers touched the back of her coat. Ella screamed and pulled the door open. Bright light swallowed everything. For a moment she could not see. Could not breathe. Then, silence. Ella opened her eyes slowly. Morning sunlight touched her face. But the woman suddenly grabbed Ella's wrist tightly. Her hand was freezing cold. Run. A deep sound echoed through the station. Like a train horn. But much louder. Much closer. Ella looked toward the tracks. Second train was coming. Fast. Too fast. Its headlights burned through the darkness like giant white eyes. But this train looked different. The windows were black. Completely black. And something moved behind them. Many things. Ella stumbled backward. What is that? The old woman's voice shook for the first time. The final train. Fear exploded inside Ella's chest. The train screamed into the station with terrible speed. The air became icy cold. The doors slowly opened. Inside, dozens of people sat silently in perfect rows. None of them moved. None of them blinked. Their faces looked gray and empty. Like dolls. Then several heads slowly turned toward Ella at exactly the same moment. Ella nearly screamed. One of the passengers stood up. Daniel. He stepped out of the train slowly. But something was wrong. Very wrong. His face had changed. His eyes looked empty now. Lifeless. Ella, he said softly. His voice sounded distant. Come with us. Ella backed away immediately. No. Daniel smiled slightly. You're already part of this place. No. The old woman moved in front of Ella protectively. She still has time. Daniel looked at the woman coldly. You said that about yourself once. The station lights exploded overhead. Glass rained onto the platform. The train horn screamed again. Ella turned and ran. She ran toward the staircase as fast as possible. Behind her she heard footsteps. Many footsteps. Not human footsteps. Too fast. Too uneven. Ella did not look back. She climbed the stairs two at a time, breathing hard. The sounds behind her became louder. The staircase seemed endless. Every light above flickered violently. Then suddenly, a door appeared ahead. Bright white light shined around its edges. Ella pushed herself forward desperately. The footsteps behind her were almost beside her now. She grabbed the door handle. Cold fingers touched the back of her coat. Ella screamed and pulled the door open. Bright light swallowed everything. For a moment she could not see. Could not breathe. Then, silence. Ella opened her eyes slowly. Morning sunlight touched her face. Birds sang nearby. She was sitting on a bench at her normal train station. People walked around her normally. Commuters. Students. Workers. Everything looked ordinary again. Ella breathed heavily. A young station employee approached her carefully. "Miss, are you okay?" Ella looked around wildly. "The train," she whispered. "The 11:30 train." The employee frowned. "There hasn't been a train at 11:30 here for years." Ella froze. "What?" "The line closed after an accident 3 years ago." Her blood turned cold. "Accident?" The employee nodded slowly. "A train disappeared during a storm." Ella felt sick. They never found it. The world around her suddenly felt unstable again. The employee continued talking, unaware of the fear in Ella's face. "Some people still tell strange stories about it." Ella stood up immediately. "Stories?" The employee laughed nervously. "You know, ghost stories." Ella looked toward the tracks. Silent. Then she noticed something near the edge of the platform. A small black bag. The same bag the old woman had carried. Ella slowly walked toward it. Inside the bag was only one thing. A train ticket. Old and faded. Destination: Blackwater Station. Ella stared at it silently while cold wind moved through the station once more. Then, far away in the distance, she heard a train horn.
The Vanishing Mirror. Emma found the mirror on a Tuesday morning. It was standing against the wall outside her apartment door. It was tall, taller than Emma, and it had a dark wooden frame with strange shapes carved into it. Flowers, birds, and symbols that Emma did not recognize. She looked up and down the empty hallway. There was nobody there. "Hello," she called. Her voice echoed. No one answered. Emma was a quiet woman. She was 32 years old, and she lived alone. She worked at the local library, where she put books back on shelves and helped old people find stories they liked. She did not have many friends. She did not go out much. Her life was simple and small. But the mirror was beautiful. She brought it inside. She put the mirror in her bedroom, next to the window. The light fell on it in the mornings and made it shine. Emma liked looking at herself in it. She looked the same as always: brown hair, dark eyes, a serious face. But somehow, in this mirror, she looked a little different, a little more alive. That night, she had a strange dream. She was standing in a forest. The trees were tall and black. The sky was purple. There was no wind, but she could hear a sound, soft like music, but not quite music. She walked forward. She did not know why. She just walked. Then she woke up. She sat up in bed and looked at the mirror. In the early morning light, she thought she saw something move inside it. A shadow, a shape, but then it was gone. "I am tired," she told herself. That is all. The next evening, Emma came home from work and stopped in the doorway of her bedroom. The mirror had moved. It was not next to the window anymore. It was in the center of the room, facing her bed. Emma's heart beat faster. She stood very still. Had she moved it herself? She tried to remember. She was sure she had not. She walked slowly towards the mirror and looked into it. She saw her face, pale and wide-eyed. She saw her bedroom behind her, the bed, the lamp, the bookshelf. Everything was the same. But then she noticed something. In the mirror, there was a door. A small brown door in the wall behind her. Emma turned around quickly. There was no door, just the white wall. She turned back to the mirror. The door was still there, clear as anything. Emma reached out and touched the glass. It was cold, much colder than she expected. She stepped back. "This is not possible," she whispered. She did not sleep well that night. She lay in bed and watched the mirror in the darkness. Once, just before 3 in the morning, she saw a soft golden light come from inside it. It lasted only a second, then it was gone. In the morning, she called her friend Sarah. "There is something wrong with my mirror," Emma said. "What do you mean?" Sarah asked. "It moves by itself, and it shows things that are not there." There was a silence. Then Sarah laughed. "Emma, you are working too hard. Come to dinner on Saturday. You need to go out more." Emma thanked her and put down the phone. She felt alone. She went to work. She put books back on shelves. She helped an old man find a book about roses. She tried to think about normal things. But at lunchtime, she went to the library's oldest section, the part at the back, where the ceiling was low and the books were very old, and no one went very often. She was looking for something, though she was not sure what. She found it in a thin, brown book with no title on the cover. It was a story about mirrors. Old mirrors, made in another time, in another place. The book said that some mirrors were not just for looking. Some mirrors were doors. They showed the person looking into them a place they needed to go. A place they had been before, not in this life, but in another one. Emma closed the book slowly. Her hands were shaking. That evening, she stood in front of the mirror for a long time. The door was there again, small and brown, in the wall that did not exist. Emma looked at it. She thought about her life, her quiet apartment, her small routines, her empty weekends. She thought about the dream with the dark trees and the purple sky. She thought about the music that was not quite music. She put her hand on the glass. This time it was not cold. It was warm, like a hand holding hers. Emma closed her eyes. She took a breath. She stepped forward. She was in the forest. The trees were tall and black, just like in her dream. The sky was deep purple, with a moon that was too large and too close. The ground under her feet was soft, like moss. Emma looked around. She was not afraid, and that surprised her. She felt, instead, a strange feeling of coming home, as if she had been here before many times. She walked forward. The music came again, soft and low, from somewhere in the trees. She followed it. After a while, she came to a small house. Light came from its window. The door was brown, small and brown, just like the door in the mirror. She knocked. The door opened. Inside, there was a woman. She was old, very old, with white hair and bright, dark eyes. She looked at Emma and smiled. "You are late," the old woman said. "I have been waiting." "Waiting for me?" Emma asked. "For many years." The old woman moved back from the door. "Come in. I will explain everything." Emma went inside. The house was small and warm. There were candles on every surface. There were plants on the windowsill and books on every shelf. It smelled of wood and tea and something sweet. The old woman sat down. Emma sat across from her. "The mirror belonged to your grandmother," the old woman said, "and her grandmother before her. It has been waiting for you. Every woman in your family comes here one day when she is ready." "Ready for what?" Emma asked. "To remember," the old woman said simply. Emma did not understand, but she also felt, deep inside her, that she did just a little, as if the word remember was a key, and somewhere inside her there was a door it could open. "What do I need to remember?" she asked. The old woman smiled. She stood up slowly and went to a shelf. She took down a small box and brought it to Emma. Emma opened it. Inside was a mirror, very small, no bigger than her hand, with the same dark wooden frame, the same carved shapes. Emma looked into it. She saw herself, but not as she was now. She saw herself as many different women, in many different times, in many different places. All the same eyes, all the same serious face, all looking back at her. Emma walked back through the forest alone. The sky was getting lighter. When she reached the place where she had arrived, she stepped forward, and she was back in her bedroom. The mirror stood in front of her, quiet and still. Emma looked at herself in it. She looked the same. Brown hair, dark eyes, a serious face. But she was smiling. Outside, the city was waking up. She could hear cars, birds, the sound of the world beginning its day. Emma got dressed, made herself tea, and sat by the window. She did not feel alone anymore. She did not know exactly what she had remembered. She could not put it into words, but she felt it warm and solid somewhere in her chest, like something lost had been found, like a long question had, at last, found its answer. She looked at the mirror one more time before she left for work. "Thank you," she said quietly. The mirror was still, but just for a moment, just the smallest moment, she thought she saw it shine. The secret room. Kate loved old houses. Whenever she visited a new town, she looked for the oldest buildings. She enjoyed imagining the stories hidden inside their walls. One Saturday, she visited her Aunt Emma's country house. The house was more than 100 years old and stood alone among tall trees. "I'm glad you're here," Aunt Emma said when Kate arrived. "The house feels too quiet when I'm alone." After lunch, Emma left to visit a neighbor, and Kate stayed behind. The old house was peaceful. Sunlight shone through the windows, and the wooden floors creaked softly beneath her feet. Kate explored room after room. She looked at old paintings, dusty books, and antique furniture. Then she noticed something unusual. At the end of the upstairs hallway stood a tall bookshelf. One side looked slightly different, as if it had been moved many times. Curious, Kate stepped closer. When she touched the shelf, she felt a cool draft of air. That was strange. She pushed gently. Nothing happened. She pushed harder. The bookshelf moved. Kate stared in surprise. Behind it was a small wooden door. The door had no handle, only a brass keyhole. "A secret room," she whispered. Excited, she searched nearby and found an old desk. Inside one drawer were several keys. She tried them one by one. The first didn't fit. The second was too small. The third wouldn't turn. The fourth worked perfectly. Click. The door opened. Kate grabbed a flashlight from downstairs and stepped inside. The room was small and dusty, but beautiful. A round window near the ceiling let in a little light. There was a table, 2 chairs, and several shelves filled with boxes. It looked untouched for many years. Why would anyone hide this room? Kate wondered. She opened the first box. Inside were letters tied with blue ribbon. Another box held old photographs. A third contained notebooks. Kate sat down and began looking through them. The photographs showed people standing in front of the house many years ago. One photograph caught her attention. A young woman stood beside the round window of the secret room. Written on the back were the words, "For my special room, summer 1958. Kate looked through the notebooks. The first page of one read, "Property of Clara Williams." The notebook wasn't a diary. Instead, it was filled with ideas, sketches, short stories, and observations. Clara clearly loved writing. Kate continued reading. Soon, she felt as if she knew Clara. The young woman seemed curious, creative, and full of imagination. As she turned the pages, she noticed something odd. A small star appeared again and again. Sometimes it was beside a paragraph. Sometimes it sat alone in a corner. At first, Kate ignored it. Then she realized the stars must mean something. She copied all the starred sentences onto a piece of paper. When she finished, the sentences seemed random. But then she noticed a pattern. The first word of each sentence formed a message. Kate read it aloud. "Look beneath the window." Her eyes immediately moved to the round window. Below it stood a narrow wooden bench. She knelt down and examined the floor. At first she found nothing. Then she noticed a loose floorboard. Her heart began to race. Carefully, she lifted it. Beneath the board was a small metal box. Kate smiled. The mystery was becoming more interesting. She opened the box. Inside, she found a silver key and a folded note. The note read, "If you found this, you enjoy mysteries as much as I do." Kate laughed softly. The message continued. The key opened something important. The next clue waits where stories sleep. She read the sentence again. Where stories sleep. Then she understood. The library. Kate hurried downstairs. The house library was filled with old books. She searched carefully until she spotted a small writing desk near the fireplace. One drawer was locked. She inserted the silver key. Click. The drawer opened. Inside was a single dark blue notebook. Kate carried it to the table and opened it. It belonged to Clara. This notebook was more personal than the others. Kate began reading. To the person reading this, if you solve my clues, congratulations. The secret room was never meant to hide treasure. The real treasure is curiosity. I wanted this room to inspire someone in the future. Maybe that someone is you. Kate sat quietly for a moment. She felt connected to a person she had never met. Later that day, Aunt Emma returned home. "You look busy," Emma said. Kate smiled. "You won't believe what I found." She explained everything. The hidden bookshelf, the secret room, the clues, the key, the notebooks. Emma listened with growing surprise. "There was a secret room in my house all this time." Apparently, there was. Together they walked upstairs and entered the room. Emma looked around in amazement. "I've lived here for years and never knew this existed." Kate showed her Clara's writings and photographs. As Emma studied one of the pictures, she suddenly paused. "Wait," she said. "I think Clara was my grandmother's cousin." "Really?" Emma nodded. "I remember hearing stories about a relative who loved books and puzzles." The discovery made everything feel even more special. That evening, they carefully organized the boxes and explored Clara's collection. There were dozens of stories, drawings, and clever puzzles. It felt like discovering a forgotten world. The next morning, before leaving, Kate visited the secret room one last time. Sunlight shone through the round window. The room no longer felt mysterious. Instead, it felt warm and welcoming. Kate sat at the table and opened one of Clara's notebooks. On the final blank page, she wrote a short message. "Thank you for the adventure." Then she signed her name. As she walked toward the door, she looked back one last time. Some mysteries end with treasure. Others end with answers. But this one ended with something better. A connection between two curious people separated by many years. The secret room had been hidden behind a bookshelf. But the greatest thing hidden, there was not a key, a box, or a clue. It was a story waiting to be found.